I'm gonna share it. Does it smell right in here? I had to light a candle because I was farting in here earlier. Sorry.
This is okay. Happens.
All right, everybody's on screen. Let me share it to the twats. The twatter.
I see how highly you think of our friends.
The twatter. How have you been, by the way?
You know, same old, nothing that you wouldn't be.
Because we don't have to talk about it, but you have to go in after. Oh, look who came to see us right now. Hey, Lily. Why are you letting me share?
The animals sense my distress and they come to the rescue.
No, come here. Go be by him. Oh, here she comes.
Kitty,
She's such a shit.
how come we should be better friends? Why are you so shy?
No, she's not shy. She's just like a brat, you know? Oh, is that your phone ringing? You might want your phone.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of spam calls lately. And then when I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, I feel better because I don't get as many spam calls. But then when someone who's an actual person,
You're like,
then I don't notice.
go get him. She's gonna get you.
Whether or not she's a brat or shy, apparently she doesn't. She wants to do whatever she's doing more than she wants my love.
Yeah, that's wrong. Yeah, fault. All right, we're here. Been 2 weeks because last week it was windy and my power kept flickering.
Yeah.
So, what else happened for 2 weeks? Some shit.
Yeah. What you mean, like in the world?
All of it. Although, let's see, 2 weekends ago we had a good weekend because we got to go to a comedy show.
Oh yeah, we got to see Robbie the Fire do his stand-up stuff.
Yes, that was awesome. That was such a good weekend too because Friday, Saturday, and Sunday I did shit. Saturday night was libertarian stuff and we had a fun party. Friday night was a stock show thing, so that was fun. So then like that whole week I was like down because it was like so much fun and I haven't had like fun in forever, you know, like that. And I was like,
Didn't want it to ever end, but then when it did, it was kind of depressing.
yeah, I was all down and shit, but it was worthy. I think Robbie recorded that thing he did, and he's releasing it tonight.
Awesome.
So we have to watch that later. I want to watch
Yeah,
that
if that's
later.
up, I think we both recommend that because that was a fire set that he did.
That was funny, and so that's not his normal bit, I guess. So he said in March he's gonna come back, and hopefully they'll do. Because they're coming back for the convention, but hopefully they book book that place again and do another night, so you don't have to like go to the convention. You know what I mean? So hopefully that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, no one's watching right now, so don't feel nervous.
Well, we keep on getting 1 and then 0 and then 1. Hello, one person.
Hello, one person. Whatever. We just do. Some people do go back and watch these. It's funny because I'll get random comments
cool.
like way later on. So
yeah, I guess you can't always, especially unless you're like a huge show. You can't always expect a large audience for the live stream. We've had as many as 9 before that like stayed pretty stable.
And it's random time during the middle of the day.
Well, we got 2 now. We got
Hex, hey Hex. Hex actually did a live stream
friend.
with me Sunday night. And we were on for like 2.5 hours. Obviously,
That's
he's in
cool.
Ohio, so we were just chatting. So
I'm gonna have to go back and check out your channel, and because I'm sure there's a lot of content on there that I'd like to kind of.
We're getting there. I felt pretty like confident. I was mad at myself the other day because I haven't had any girls on, so I'm like I'm a sexist pig. But I have had someone from Austria on, someone from Australia on, and then like Anthony is Scottish, so I'm like I am pretty worldly. Like I've had a lot of people on around the world. So
yeah, despite being despite having like a severe internalized misogyny.
Yeah, so I'm trying to set up next week, hopefully to have a girl stream and have a couple girls on. We'll see how that goes. I don't know.
It'd be good. Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I like the idea of getting like more people to talk to from other countries and stuff like that as well, because it's good to get the perspectives of what's going on there.
Exactly. We're just
Was
people in Colorado.
was
so-
the Australia one pretty interesting?
Yeah, so me and him have been chatting a lot, for a little bit now, for a couple months. But he's like learning what's going on over there. He's been getting a little depressed and stuff because it's getting worse, and it's like family's pressuring him. But then he's also trying to like get more off grid and homestead and stuff too. So then it's like he feels confident, but then I don't know. They're making things so hard out there. Like he thinks he won't be able to see his psychologist after a while, without
Yeah.
being vaccinated. And
Yeah, it's like when I think about how it must be in Australia, like feel bad because I'm like forgetting like how good I have it compared to in some parts of the world,
yeah, it's,
like in Austria where they're bringing back National Socialism with their lockdowns just for people that don't take the
vaccine.
shit.
We have a Canadian too. Sorry.
That's not polite. They can't help it.
The guy in Austria, he's actually German, but he lives in Austria right now. But he's is that Dino Missing Clue? Have you ever interacted with him?
Dino, yeah, I think so. He's had like an avatar of a dinosaur
Yeah,
for
it's
a
kind of
while.
yellow.
Yeah, and I think that he's like posted some pictures because I think for a while there was an avatar that wasn't like indicative of it being like but then I got to feel like, oh yeah, this is a dude that.
So I just did one with him on Sunday, and he did get the vaccine now because they were making it so hard in Austria. But he's like, whatever, and he's actually hoping he can kind of make a point because, so he got the first one, he can't get the second one till like the end of January, then he can't get the booster till like March, and so then he's not even technically fully vaccinated for like months.
Right.
How stupid is that? Like, it's so stupid. The whole thing is so stupid.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and the crazy thing that really, like, everything just to me at this point makes these people look like unbelievable psychopaths. But I mean, but some of the things that really like blow my mind is like, because what kind of looks like, if I try to put myself in the shoes of somebody who's a little bit less inclined to be resistant to like getting the shot or giving into all that, like, I'm sure it'll be fine and it'll make my life easier, and it's not really a huge issue, but then they do it and they're still being held hostage by their governments, and then they are, of course, predictably propagandized into, instead of blaming the tyrants that continue to abuse them despite their compliance, the government is like, well, it's not our fault that other people didn't comply, so blame them. Like, no, dude, like, you don't get to abuse people and then tell them that it's the fault of the people that didn't give in to their abuse. It doesn't make it.
It's such an abuse tactic. Like,
yeah, it's so fucked up.
For people who have to do it for work too, like, unless the work signs something that says, okay, I mean, they can still fire you. So here you go get vaccinated for whatever, and they can fire you still for what a legit reason or not. But like, it doesn't guarantee your job, So that's what I would make them like sign some shit. Hex in Ohio, he's been having a test, and he's actually a very pure blood. He's never had any vaccines ever.
Oh, cool.
So, and he's been having a test. Everyone at his work is vaccinated. And then, on Sunday, he was laughing because he got an email and they're shutting the office because there was a COVID outbreak. So he said that there's been 4 people who had COVID in the office, all vaccinated, and they've got COVID now. It's like, it's so stupid.
And do you even know whether they actually seem to have a virus or whether they just have a test?
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't know. Well, I don't know, because I don't know if they were making I don't know if Hex is still watching, but if they were making the vaccinated people at your work test. And what's annoying is he would get his test. He couldn't even get one because he couldn't even go get one because people are not working, and like they make it such a hassle. Like, ugh, so he wasn't even going to get a result, and he was going to miss more work because he couldn't get his result. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
it's,
Well, it's like that time that I was in New Hampshire. They had me as a part of a group that was supposed to then move on and go to Vermont. Like most of our Yale group were sticking around the Manchester, New Hampshire area, but then they were gonna have like 5 of us, just one car of people, go and knock doors in Vermont. And then we had this incident where one of the members of the group got sick and then tested positive, and then informed the health department because didn't think that the organization was handling it responsibly. And then the health department contacted the hotel staff, and then the hotel staff freaked out and said that we all needed to leave. And then I guess there was more to it, so I may as well cut to the chase. That I then reluctantly decided to go and get tested, so I could prove, I guess, that I didn't need to be quarantined. And then when I got my negative test back, they still said that I had to quarantine and that I couldn't go to Vermont. And the only people that could at that point go to Vermont were people who didn't get tested. Because if you got tested, then there's a chance, I guess, that you're contagious. But if you don't get tested, then you're fine. And it's just, none of it has ever made any logical sense.
no.
The blind have been leading the blind this entire time.
The heck said everybody was getting test work. Okay, well, at least that. I mean, it's so stupid, but yeah. Oh yeah, and I don't know if you saw on Twitter. I went to my doctor today, which is a primary care doctor.
Oh yeah.
And so he's outside the system. And last year he was I went in June of 2020 for just a checkup. I only go once a year, and he was like, this is stupid. All the COVID tyranny stuff was stupid. And then this year, and he literally was trying to push the vax on me today. And I'm like, I'm healthy.
The doctor was trying to push you to get this shot.
Yeah. He was actually saying, no, I just don't want you to get the disease. And I'm like, well, A, I think I had it. B,
if you're a qualified doctor, you should know that it doesn't stop you from getting the disease.
Yeah, it doesn't stop you.
Look at me. Have you looked at any of the research about how this disease affects different people? And why are you so concerned about me getting the disease when I have hardly even a ghost of a chance of ending up in the hospital for it?
And even if I did, I did. You know what I mean? And he was saying something. He's like, well, I have this one patient who, I do need a new one. But I'm hoping there'll be more primary care doctors opening up with all this bullshit. But anyways, he was like, yeah, I have this one patient. It's been 8 months getting them better. I don't know how to get them better. And I'm like, well, we're humans.
Wait, what about this patient? He
are
got
we the same?
he got the virus 8 months ago,
Yeah,
and he's still he's still not back to feeling his normal
better,
self or
yeah.
anything like that.
And I'm like, that's not my fault, first of all.
And it's not your job to figure out what the issue really is with this dude. And all that really sounds like to me is your doctor admitting to you that he's incompetent and that he doesn't have any idea what to do about people, and that if something happens to you, he won't know what to do about that for you either. Yeah. And therefore, so just, I don't know, do what the people who are probably smarter than me who work for the government say to do. That way I can at least say that I advised you to do something that I thought could possibly help. It's just, I don't know.
In the
just
moment,
doesn't instill confidence.
In the moment, I wish I would have said, well, if something happens to me, can I sue you? I should have said something like this. Okay, Jeff said, I worked at the COVID gulag for the homeless in his town. Not one person got it, but anyone who wouldn't get the vax got laid off after doing it for 3 months. Yeah, of course.
Wow. So this is kind of like a quarantine facility of sorts. And then it sounds like they basically are just physically holding you hostage until you either give in to getting the shot or don't, and then they'll let you out of the quarantine facility without a job if you didn't, and let you go back to your job if you did. That's what that sounds like to me.
Thug Nasty. I love Thug Nasty. And he DJs 100 people every weekend, and he's not been sick. Yeah, and you were kind of doing it during the whole thing, weren't you, Thug Nasty? Like whatever work you could get from finding people who would let you do it.
Yeah, and I let like probably upwards of 25 strangers in my car every single day.
And you're alive still.
Yeah, somehow. I don't know. It's wild.
If you get more, it's more dangerous. You get in a car wreck than anything.
I mean, I've seriously done every single thing I can to get infected. I just don't know what else there is.
You very well could have been thought like that was me. Like if I had not known that I was around someone who had it, the day I felt a little tiny bit sick, which my nose was running, which my nose kind of sometimes always runs anyways, but I could tell it was something different that day.
Right.
If I hadn't really been paying too much attention though,
Yeah.
just the taste stuff, obviously. Like the taste stuff that's how I knew I had I had it.
Which I wish I could like go back in time and remember if I happen to remember having any. I might have had symptoms involving taste or something like that, but I had just never heard of a COVID or anything like that back when I think I might have got it, December of 2019. But I mean, it's somewhat uncommon. I very, very rarely get something like a flu.
Right.
It's not that uncommon for me to get a cold, so it seems kind of weird to me that I didn't even get so much as a cold last winter at any point, especially because I have not even been taking care of myself. We're
getting worse as the days go on.
But in any case, I got way sicker than I can ever remember getting for any cold in that December of 2019. And I mean, I was just like, I don't think I had a severe fever, but I was sweating bullets. I was just laid out. It was a really unpleasant sickness that I got, and I haven't even gotten sick ever since, despite my best efforts to abuse my body. But it's just.
I would sometimes get after a stock show, I'll get a little cold because I've been working like 100 something hours in a barn in the cold around all these people. So I would sometimes fight a little cold off usually after, but it wouldn't get bad. But then they canceled it last year. And then this year, I've tried to be around people, but I don't go do my normal things. I haven't gone to concerts.
Yeah.
I've been around people. So I'm like, shit, after the stock show this year, I'm going to probably die. They're probably going to release something that'll make me die.
And that's probably why I haven't gotten sick, because I haven't been going to concerts around all those Wookiees.
Yeah.
Like my good friend, has often referred to it as the Wook flu, because like anytime that you get like sick after going to a music festival, like, I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but now of course all the Burning Man people are like pro-vaccine and stuff nowadays.
Yeah, as well. And I think that I think the ones of them that know how I feel about it all are basically just ghosting me at this point.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of a bummer, but I also I don't know. It sucks. I don't want to turn into a monster or start like hating people because they're being shitty, but I just feel like I have no patience left over for people that don't think like, and because there's also that attitude of like, self-righteousness that goes along with believing in the narrative to a T, where you probably have like every other evil political ideology under the sun if you even have a question about about the protocols that they've put in place over the virus. And it's obvious, like there's that thing with the Sarah Silverman, like, well, that actually didn't have anything to do with COVID, I don't even think, but it's the same phenomenon. It was like DeSantis in Florida had said something about forming a state guard, I think for the sake of hurricane relief in the case of that happening. And then this like Joyanne Reid says, this is some fascisty bananas. And then it's like Sarah Silverman is like, why don't you read the article that you're sharing? Because like that doesn't really make any sense. Lots of states have state guards.
And Sarah Silverman actually said that?
Yeah, that was how I found out about the story, was because that was the story from like I don't know, like Jimmy Dore or somebody like that, talking about how, and I think that he and she have been friends for quite a while, so that was maybe part of why that was relevant. But yeah, but then there's like all these people who are immediately accusing Sarah of being racist for trying to basically talk some sense into this corporate media personality who posts this inflammatory remark completely unjustified by anything in the actual story. Like, I'm sorry, it's like, that's the thing is, I think people need to learn how to not apologize for this shit ever. Like, somebody wants to go and say something perfectly normal in a vacuum, especially if they are like a major voice for like a political party. If they're gonna go out and say something like that, like this some fascisty bananas right here, and then you just go and you just try to like set the record straight a little bit, and then everybody attacks you and throws slurs at you that have no basis for anything that you said and is obviously not in good faith, then your only response should be fuck you. Like, it should not, you shouldn't even defend yourself or apologize for anything you said, obviously.
It's just logic. It's like anything logical or just calling out anything that's like, this is what Tim Pool said the other night, because he's like, I understand that people think I'm far right or think I'm this, blah, blah, but all we do is basically look at the actual facts and shit. And they're like, that's what's racist. And that's what's, you're a bigot if you point out the facts and shit. Like,
well, yeah, it was like this guy I was getting into it with on Twitter was like, I looked at his profile and it said something very bizarre. It said like, truth is relative, but facts are facts.
okay.
One can only speculate what he means by that. You know, he's not gonna fucking explain himself.
So, he rolled his eyes, he heard the Omicron. Yeah, I just saw a post by Bill Gates saying like, oh, the Omicron.
Yeah, I've been actually that's been on the tip of my tongue this whole time. The thing about this Omicron, especially because of the thing that I saw today. So that may be a good segue.
Talk about
So
Bill Gates.
yeah, maybe. Well, I don't know. Maybe you'll have to talk about the Bill Gates aspect of it because I didn't see that. I just saw the somebody had posted like this really really brief article. Like I was amazed. Like I don't always look at these things, but it was like from like the Insider or something like that, which might be Business Insider or something like that. But I mean, the headline was something very basic, like first man dies of the Omicron, and then it has like bullet points once you actually open the article, which I thought it was interesting because it's very different what the bullet point was from the headline. The bullet point was like it the language was like that it was that he was believed to have had Omicron.
Yeah,
like, which is it?
test.
Did he have it, or is he believed to have had it? And then, but the part that was probably the worst was that when you get into the article, it says that he was in a he was at like especially high risk due to underlying conditions and his unvaccinated status.
No, of course.
I'm like, okay, scrubbing this whole article to see what are we talking about, you know, because underlying conditions could mean a lot of things.
Yeah,
and how come they don't seem to think that that's important? That's the thing that these people don't get. But I mean, by these people, I just mean whoever falls for this shit. Is that like, you have to think, don't you, about why they would not bother to specify what these underlying conditions are, especially in an article that is only going to affect anybody the way it's obviously designed to affect anybody, and it's relying on one person who has ever even been believed to have died from this particular variant. Like, they're trying to make fear porn out of that. And the best they can do is give you this vague account of underlying conditions. Like, I don't even know why they bothered to say that if they were just, because it's already practically like they're lying. So why wouldn't they just omit that altogether? You're going to omit the details of the underlying conditions. You might as well omit that there were underlying conditions. Just why don't you just say, like, yeah, he didn't get the shot, so we shot him, and so his unvaccinated status caused him to die because he's a dirty anti-vaxxer. Like,
Yeah.
why don't they just?
Yeah, they said the South Africans who supposedly found it were like, yeah, it's not a big deal,
Yeah.
and then they're trying to make it a big deal here, and it's like,
I mean, and for all we know, the underlying conditions was a bullet wound.
right, or like they had some of those articles where it was like, no offense, but it was very large people who were younger, and they were very large, and they're like they were healthy otherwise, and it's like, no, they're not healthy otherwise, like. Ugh.
Well, it's like your mostly peaceful protests. Like,
yeah.
This woman weighs 400 pounds and has diabetes and requires a very, very high dosage of insulin every time that she eats any food at all. But she is otherwise healthy.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I wonder why Mother Nature's. This is what I'm saying. Like, especially the people who are like are freaking out about the hospitals and stuff. I'm like, look, if I absolutely need to go to the hospital with COVID, which I doubt I ever would, but if I did, you can turn me away from COVID. But all the other bazillions of fucking ways I can get hurt or need the hospital, I want to still go to the hospital. You know what I mean? Like, this is just one fucking little thing, and like no one's even talking about like all these other things. It's so weird.
And the comments of course on those kinds of posts are like a mixed bag of like people who are like, oh, he died, he was unvaccinated, Darwin Award, and these other people were like, yeah, well, good, I'm glad that he died because he didn't follow the science. And then other people that, but it's like, okay, pick one, please.
Right.
Do you just want us to die? Or do you, or are you trying to look out for our well-being? I don't.
It's so confusing.
Obviously, it's not the same person, so that different people can have different perspectives and stuff like that. But still, the message that I get at the end of the day is you don't agree with the regime, therefore fuck you. And I don't see why my opinion should have anything to do with anything. I think, okay, fuck you too. Like,
yeah. So fucked up. Even that Delta stuff. I remember there was one of the land trusts I work with. One of our landowners passed away, and he's like an old, grumpy man who lived in a dirty, nasty house, like rats and mice and shit. And they're like, oh, so and so died from COVID Delta variant. And I'm like, you don't know that. Like, there was no way they tested his death, like, to know, like, it's not going to be the same with the Omicron or whatever. So fucked up.
Yeah, so it might even be pointless to like scrutinize these things and look for vague language that like suggests a lie of omission when it's like, why wouldn't, I mean, they would just make shit up if they thought they could get away with it anyway. So it doesn't even matter whether they're trying to be slightly dishonest or whether they are just making shit up.
As I kind of said to my doctor, because he's like, I don't really want you to get the virus. And I said, yeah, because it's been man-made and we don't know what the hell is going to happen. And you just kind of like brush that off, of course. But I'm like,
is that even in debate anymore? Like, nobody doesn't think it was a man-made virus.
They don't. It's not in debate. It's open. It's out there. But no one, the people who are so part of the regime, like, don't want to think about that, because then they're thinking, oh, the people who let this go, I'm following everything they told me to do. And that they probably can't compute that in their heads. But it is like none of my normie friends have really said anything about it.
Well, because that's the thing is like it's just there's so many factors to me that bring me all back to the one point. But I mean, even if you were to eliminate all of this other bullshit that's going on, I would still feel like, okay, at best, what it looks like, okay, let's say I don't believe this, but let's just for the sake of argument concede that the virus is definitely going to kill me. And the vaccine is definitely my only hope of survival. In that case, the best excuse that I could have for getting the vaccine is, oh, okay, cool. So you created a deadly virus to coerce me into accepting your totalitarianism and your medical fascism. So in the best case scenario, I would still say, fuck you, kill me. Like seriously, I don't negotiate with fucking terrorists.
No. Did
Yes.
you watch the McCullough or listen to the McCullough interview on Rogan?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was saying they've been working on these vaccines for fucking ever. Really.
Yeah. I mean, and that's of course. There is just one thing after another, but it's these
Doesn't
little
matter.
it's these little tidbits that would stand on their own. That should be enough for people to wake the fuck up. The existence and timing of Event 201 itself is already so goddamn suspicious that the fact that it doesn't that doesn't even register with people as like relevant is maddening to me. Like nobody who had ever even heard of a coronavirus. I mean, maybe everyone except for me, but that's not a word that was in my vernacular prior to like when they started putting the news out from like China, like welding people dying in hallways and then welding people into their apartments and stuff like that. It was like, man, that's crazy.
They were just like colds.
But then we find out that in like October or November of 2019 there was this big conference with all of these same people, like the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, Gavi, like all of these people getting together to do a simulation of a hypothetical coronavirus pandemic, and how all the world leaders will need to learn how to coordinate their efforts to fight such a thing if and when it happens. And then it happens a couple months later. Like, are we not supposed to even suspect that y'all might have had anything to do with this? How fucking stupid are we supposed to be? I don't get it.
Even just back when like Fauci lied about the mask, that should have made people be like, "Oh, this is stupid." And like, there's been so many points, and people just, and we're slowly going. That's why it's scary. Like I was telling my doctor today too. I'm like, "Well, I'm not allowed to go do anything anymore," and he's like, "Well, make sure you're getting out, not just sitting at home alone." I'm like, "But I'm not allowed to go do anything anymore. Like I'm not allowed to go to fucking hot yoga." So stupid. But they don't. Obviously, he's a doctor, and he's probably not thinking about the politics as much, where like I am, and how we've slowly literally been losing our lives for 2 years, and we were not dead yet over this vaccine. No one knock on wood, no one I personally know have died. I believe it is real and people can die from it. Like I know people that have died from it, but like what the hell? Like I just don't get it. And it's just all this social shit. It takes 1 second. Yeah, they've been doing this. I don't trust Big Pharma. And now we're like, all these people who didn't trust Big Pharma are like Big Pharma's biggest salespeople. Big Pharma literally made people who hated them 3 years ago into their biggest salespeople.
Yeah. Well, like and the monoclonals thing, like one of the things that really stuck with me with that Peter McCullough interview was when, I mean, he had some anecdote. I think he was mentioning people he knows personally, and it was like a couple, and like the woman had started to get sick and somehow had received monoclonal antibody therapy, and then like her husband, who was like in his 30s and was like overweight and all this kind of stuff, also gets sick and then goes to the hospital, and then like at that point, once you're checked into the hospital, you aren't allowed to have monoclonal antibody. I don't remember. I probably have to rewatch it to see, but I do remember that it all went together in a way that was just. I mean, no questions like that. I could not defend the position that wasn't murder when somebody who is clearly like has a bad case, and we know what this treatment is that seems to have saved his wife's life, and we're not going to give it to him because of bureaucratic hoops. Like, I'm sorry, man, but like, what is your excuse for killing people just because you might get in trouble with your like bureaucrat overlords? Like, like what happened to people's balls? Like, oh, I'm not risking saving somebody's life because I might get sued for giving them an unapproved treatment that's only unapproved because of this arbitrary circumstance of you being checked into the hospital.
Yeah, and we need our Dr. Houses. Like, no one's a Dr. House anymore, where they're just like willing to do anything or try anything. Colin said we have to make our own bullshit. Yeah, we do need to make our own parallel. Like, I mean, at a certain point, we'll have to if they're gonna keep going with this shit. Like, and I don't know if we're safe out. I don't know what's gonna happen. How are we fucking even here?
Well, I guess, yeah, sometimes I wonder why they haven't just gone ahead and like thinned out the herd, like Thanos, like at least. I mean, they have the capacity to have wiped out 50% of us by now. So
Yeah.
it does make me wonder, like, why haven't they yet? I guess they do. I guess they do appreciate potential tax cattle. Like that, it's as much as they can just print their own money. They still they you know, if they didn't like our tax revenue, they wouldn't do it. So.
True. That's true. I just was reading Chicago. Just now, Chicago put the Vax Pass in for all their businesses, and then someone looked it up, and they're like, that literally keeps 50% of the Black people in Chicago out of businesses, and it's like, like, how is that justifiable? Like,
Well, and then
isn't that
while
racist?
that with the way that their framing has already been set up is that like it's just set up to that they could do anything that they could do the worst shit you can even imagine directly against Black people, and then they would have they've already set themselves up to be able to blame the unvaccinated for that. Oh, we didn't want to abuse all of these Black folks, but we had to because of the pandemic, and that's the fault of everyone who didn't get the shot.
Yep.
Like that's what they would obviously say, with it wouldn't bat an eye.
Nope. I can't. She was like, so I think happy to talk about. Oh yeah, but that's what Hex said. And Hex is a beautiful Black man. He's 6'8". Remember, voter ID is racist, but somehow we're all.
Yeah.
But somehow, how like everybody gets this shot is. It's just, it's maddening. It's maddening how dumb people are to go along with it too. Like, literally, like my like super white bitch friends, like last year during the George Floyd thing, putting the black square up. It's like, you dumb bitches. Like, you don't even know what you're doing. You know, like I don't know if you remember that. Like when everyone's like, oh, on this day we all need to put a black screen up for George Floyd and police violence, blah blah blah. And the people who were pushing it were like politicians, and it's just like.
I must have actually missed the black square, but I remember the yellow square.
Was it for that Asian hate?
Yeah, but I didn't even
That's so
hear.
racist.
But I also didn't even hear about the yellow square until the yellow square was already racist. So it was like, okay, cool. Well, I didn't jump on that bandwagon anyway. But
Yeah.
I still managed. I still felt the need to argue about like, okay, maybe the yellow square thing is also stupid. But I mean, the idea that you're going to try to stir up a torch mob over people who, I mean, it does at least appear that their intention is either to try to stand up for Asian people or to virtue signal that you care about Asian people. The idea that like they now need to be smeared as racists, like it's just, I don't know, all these people are just
goes around and around and around.
Yeah, it just goes around in circles. And then it just makes me, and then when I think about it like that, I feel stupid for even getting wrapped up in any of it. I just feel the need to like point out flaws in people's logic and stuff like that. But I may be what I'm doing might be what they wanted me to do to begin with. Be involved in the bullshit controversies instead of actually doing anything of consequence that could threaten their shit. Like, I don't know.
I don't know. Logic is racist. Or it's like the freedom is slavery from 1984, that one quote.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think that for me, what kind of serves as a little bit of a white pill, though, is that like that really like silly nonsense has been around for so long that I kind of think that we can get away with just not caring at all anymore, because enough people are at least awake to the nonsense of the wokeness
Yeah.
The like they don't take these kinds of things, like people whose opinion matters might not even really take these things seriously anyway. Like the boy has cried wolf so much that like that they are at least going to be skeptical when they hear tales of wolves. So
War is peace, freedom is slavery. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I do keep getting, at least on my Instagram. So my Instagram now, I've started slowly let my like Liberty friends on because I have it locked still. But like, and my Normie friends stopped following me and stuff. But there's still some on there, and I'll get messages and like or they'll like comment on something like.
you really feel like you've been totally unfriended, unfollowed by
But a
all
lot.
of
Oh
the
yeah, one of
normies?
them even like virtue signaled. Oh, this is so anti-science.
I can't believe I ever followed this girl. She is crazy.
I'm so crazy. But one guy today, even he's a friend I went to elementary school with, and he had gotten in a really bad motorcycle accident, and the only thing that like saved his life and brought him back was physical, like exercise and being physical, and he became a physical trainer. And he's just said today, and like I'm getting more comments. He's like, "Yeah, why aren't they talking about healthy living? You know, the things we've all said. Like, why haven't they mentioned anything about healthy living and only about the vaccine? Blah blah blah."
And that may be the real red flag.
It should
You know,
be.
it's what they don't say, and that's kind of, I think that's a lot of the power behind what McCullough was talking about. I mean, regardless of, because yeah, he made some comments that would be sort of in the realm of like, there's maybe some concerns that we should have about these shots and the safety concerns. He did make points about, you know, because he was asked about like the efficacy of masks and stuff like that, which were pretty well in alignment with what Fauci initially said. It's like, it's not really going to be that effective. It might stop a droplet here or there. I mean, it makes some amount of sense, I guess, for like medical professionals who are around it all the time, and if they're going to be up close with like patients, like it makes some amount of sense to do that. But there's really no point to masking everybody, especially people who aren't even sick and stuff like that. And he's just like, oh yeah, that makes logical sense. And of course, once he goes back on that, people actually believe that he was lying the first time instead of the second time.
Yeah.
But I digress. I was saying that, but the thing that I think was the most powerful about McCullough's message was that it's the things that are obvious that people should be doing if the goal really was to look after people's health and safety. If you actually cared about people, if you really had humanitarian motivations, there are tons of things you would obviously doing that you are not doing. And that alone is enough that like these people have there's absolutely no reason to trust them or to like allow them anything at all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And he was saying kind of like how it is like the only thing they think about is, oh, you get it and you go to the hospital. It's like, no, like you're at home trying to make yourself better. Like he's like, what is the protocol for at home and making people better at home? Like
his goal, he stressed a few times, was to keep people from going to the hospital. Why don't, like, if we don't want people to be so sick that they need hospitalization, then what we should do is whatever we can to protect them from needing hospitalization.
Yeah.
But they appear to want hospitalization,
which I'm sure is not monetarily motivated.
I mean, and then once you get to the hospital, as we've already been over, you don't get the one therapy that we know is like, if you had to have one therapy, not a host of things where it seems like you would want, ideally you'd throw everything at it you can. Right. The horse paste, the monoclonals, there's a variety of different things that you could treat somebody. There's a variety of different things that you could treat somebody with, not just one, but if you had to pick one, it seems like it would be the monoclonal antibodies. But then that's the thing is, you already did not do anything to protect somebody from getting hospitalized to begin with. And then when they were hospitalized, because they were hospitalized, they can't get monoclonal antibodies. And then the thing that the idiots on Twitter can't help but point out is making this comment about like, a tube. You'll sure sound smart once you got a tube down your throat in the ICU.
Yeah, on the ventilator.
As if the ventilator wasn't really questionable as something that should ever be done to. I mean, I even talked to my dad about this, who's pretty normie as a doctor. He is a doctor with a lot of experience, and he's never said anything to me that wasn't 100% pro-vaccine. He was like one of the first people to get the third shot, and he used to give me flu shots at home when I was like 6 years old. It's like, dude, but he will be the first person to tell you that, like, yeah, these ventilators, you really have to know what you're doing if you even dare to try to use that to treat somebody, because there's a very high probability that once you get this thing breathing for you, you are not going to be able to breathe on your own ever again.
Right.
You would not ever use one of these these ventilator things unless you knew that it was your only hope and that you had a real good plan for getting them off of it. And that's not happening. I mean, like, people like Cuomo's like, this is what we need. We need as much money. All hands on deck. Send as many ventilators as you can in New York. Send all of these untrained nurses and tell them to put as many of these people on ventilators as possible. And yeah, it may be a little bit over. I may be a little too. It may not be completely fair to say that he did that because he hoped that they would all be killed. But if you wanted to generate as many deaths as you possibly could, handling it the way that Andrew Cuomo did would be the best way you could possibly do that as a politician.
It's true. Hex was saying how Fauci did that paper in 2008 about the Spanish flu and how a lot of people were getting more of a pneumonia type thing from wearing masks, which I wonder if that's why a lot of people are getting COVID now, even vaxxed, because I mean, it has to have been leaking the lungs over the last year.
And if there's any, and I'm very willing, for obvious reasons because of my bias, to accept it. I will accept evidence that anybody shows me that the masks can actually exacerbate and cause people to be more likely to get a severe case. But then one would ask, well, then if they would know that, why would they do it? Because they actually do want people to die. I'm sorry, that sounds so absurd, but I think I can't argue against it. I don't have enough information. I wish I did. I wish somebody could give me any reason to think they don't want people to die.
They literally said it at that word, the phobes. Sorry, we should talk about that, RA. Wait a minute, I gotta go to the bathroom really quick. Keep the people entertained.
Okay, I'll try to engage some of these comments here. All these high dollar super chats. And we've raised like $7 billion on this live stream already. Let's keep it going. Call RA the rugged man a childish C word, and you got in Twitter jail for that. I hadn't managed to find that guy's like Twitter account or something. I just saw like a random clip on YouTube about that. But he is a childish C word. That was the most ridiculous thing that I've ever seen on like one of these main like YouTube shows or something like that.
Did you watch the whole episode?
I think the whole episode had already been taken down by the time I had ever heard of it, because that's all I was able to find was like the short clip that people saved. Of him like he like throws the microphone over.
The whole episode
stands up with his belt unfastened for some reason.
The whole episode
like, I'm not that guy.
He like literally like they were all cool hanging out. They started talking about something because Temple will have like his topics or whatever, and then all of a sudden the guy was like, yeah, but listen, and he went right into like they're defending the cops, they're defending the Rittenhouse, and they're like, no, we were just looking at the facts, blah blah blah. And then the guy, he would not let up the whole time.
Oh, that's what you all say, you bunch of fascists. You say you're trying to look at the facts. Well, you don't fucking.
It was terrible. And he like, and Temple was like talking about his experiences he had with like being like partially Asian and then actually being treated like, because he was talking at Occupy Wall Street how they wouldn't let him speak because he looked too white, blah blah blah. Like, so he's just, and the guy was like, oh, you hurt? Are you hurt? Like, he was being so technically racist. And like, and then he said, my favorite thing that RA said, Oh yeah, the Jack Murphy thing. The best thing that the R.A. Rugman said that it was like should make people be like, what the fuck, dude? Is Tim Pool's like, do you really think it's fair that the Asians have to score higher on, SATs or ACTs or whatever, and then what if you're white you score this, and if you're black you have to score lower, and the guy's like, well yeah, but, it's harder for the blacks even just to score that, and it's like, oh my god, dude, you are literally being racist right now by saying they like. It was so terrible.
And that kind of is like the underlying joke for all of that nonsense is that it really is like it's such an effective self-fulfilling prophecy, and they're the ones fulfilling their own prophecy. Like it's kind of funny to watch because they're so wrapped up in their own bullshit that they can say the most blatantly like racist, objectively by the like actual definition of racism, racist shit, and it doesn't, and they don't even notice it coming out of their own mouths. They're unambiguously suggesting that like that non-white people are naturally less able to get through life due to their race. It's just the most absurdly ignorant racist bullshit I've ever heard, and they say it as if they are defending the people that they are insulting.
It's just constant projection, and the whole show, everything he said was like, because
the soft like, bigotry of low expectations.
He just kept going, and like here he was an actual white man telling Tim Pool, who is mostly white but still has like he's half a quarter Korean or something. Like he was telling him his experiences, like the whole, and then he's this Long Island,
that's like where that came out. He was saying something about his experiences, and that's where he kind of starts.
And he just like the guy kept, and he was like, and then he started saying, "Oh, well, why don't you guys talk about that on your show?" And this guy doesn't watch the show regularly, and they're like, "We do," and like.
I will admit that he was inspiring me to have an unfair bias against New Yorkers, because I was like looking at this douchebag and his accent, and I was like, fucking New York. But then I'm like, I know that's not fair to New Yorkers in general.
Oh yeah, the Jack Murphy thing. Yeah, he did. He said like, fuck you for bringing it up or something. He said like, fuck you for bringing it up. I met Jack Murphy at that thing. His wife is hot, so if he does cuckolding, I get it. I should look for that article, because that's like the weird talk. Me and him were literally talking about how hot his wife is. So, but yeah, it wasn't that bad. When I saw that thing, I was like, I could see where like it was rude, because he did say like, fuck you for bringing it up, like that, and they were in person at like a podcast thing. So
yeah.
I don't know.
And I saw on some threads about that, like people asking the obvious question, which actually was the question I was asking as I was starting to see this clip for the first time, was like, who is this guy and why is he even in that room? And when I saw threads about it, people were asking the same question. I had already kind of found somebody who sounded like a decent answer to that question, was that the Ian dude on that show had known him from somewhere.
Luke did, I think.
I think it was Ian.
Oh, okay.
I think it was Ian that suggested we should bring this guy on the show, and he'll offer like a differing perspective or something. It could be good. He seems cool at all that stuff. It is like, no offense really to Ian, but that sometimes he does say things and have suggestions that I feel like it's like, okay about that, and that would be an example of that kind of thing. Like, seems like Tim should know Ian well enough by now to have thought twice about like, yeah, but maybe that's not actually a good idea.
Well, even at the very beginning of the show, Lydia was like, oh, we'll hope to have you on many times. Like she said something like that. Going back to the Jack Murphy. You know what's funny though? This is gonna. Sorry, I don't know if you caught the Jack Murphy thing. He just was rude. He just said "fuck you" to this girl because he wrote an article about cucking.
Jack Murphy did.
Yeah, and she brought it up, and then he deleted it because he's all about alpha male. But here's my thing about cucking, not in the like sense of like you're trying to make people cry or something, but like hot wifing or whatever. Like the girls go back to the dudes, so they are kind of alpha males. Like that's always been my like perspective. Obviously, I have a different kind of perspective on that kind of thing, but
Yeah, I've got a very weird
We're like, we
perspective
got
on
weird.
cucking myself, and
Yeah, that's what I always
'Cause
feel
I-
like.
I know of it as like it can be like a fetish for people that actually like are kind of
Wanna
turned
be
on by the
really-
idea of their partner putting them in that space. And they
Yeah,
can kind of fetishize that. But
yeah, because there are other people who like want to be humiliated. And,
yeah,
like,
that's
for
really
sure.
what that boils down to, is a humiliation kink.
Yeah. Good Lord. So much to talk about. But what else should we talk about?
Well, I thought about this before, is that I'm usually like, when I have the chance to be in the real world, I will like, as a habit, which is usually good, ignore my phone, but the phone could actually have some inspiration, because I can look at the Twitter timeline and
I'm gonna be bad too. Don't judge me. I was being good before my whole doctor's appointment.
sure.
So I'm like, okay, I passed with flying colors. So
Yeah. Oh yeah, this was one of my favorite things that I saw while I was wasting time on Twitter earlier.
Today?
Yeah. Well, this really was like the start of the thread. It's like, this guy says, do anti-vaxxers use antivirus software, or do they prefer to let their computers acquire natural immunity? Because I think natural immunity was trending. Like, a lot of people were talking about it, and then I clicked on it, and most of it was nonsense like this, and then shortly thereafter it wasn't trending anymore. So I wonder if like that was manipulated, because they're like, okay, this is resulting in conversations that could be problematic for
And they shut it down.
yeah, because you don't really want people arguing about natural immunity, even if you've got a lot of people on the side of the propaganda. When you're not on the side of the truth, the people who are on the side of the truth are going to weigh in unless you ban them all.
Right.
And yeah, if they happen to actually be good at making their case, then no, you probably want to shut that conversation down as well as you can, because
And I'll make it look
people will see the truth. You can't have that. Oh, nice. Remember that day.
Yeah, I saw someone post something like, "Oh, I don't want to get burned to death, or I can't get burned to death because I have natural immunity to being like that." I think they were trying to make things look more ridiculous, like you were saying, like make it all crazy.
I mean,
Yeah,
anti-vaxxers, buzzword, antivirus software. Yeah.
Why is it so hard?
It's just like I mean, because I mean, obviously, like, he's trying to his very handle is J Black is funny, so, and it looks like he's holding a microphone, so I guess he's supposed to be a comedian or something like that. So you can maybe assume this is intended as a joke, but it's not a good joke if it like has if it depends on ignorance in order for it's like.
Right.
Well, I remember talking to somebody about like some of the older classic Dave Chappelle stand-ups and stuff like that, about like what I noticed, because I was like maybe 17 or something like that when some of those really good ones came out, and it was really inspiring to me, and I really developed a genuine love for Dave Chappelle, because what I saw that he was able to do was use humor to tell truths that are very difficult to tell in any other way.
Right.
And even when it seemed kind of like, man, I can't believe that he's saying what he's saying right now, at the same time, it's like, well, how else would we have really had received this communication if there wasn't this element of humor? So I kind of like started seeing him as a heroic figure all the way back then. So yeah, I mean, when you can use comedy to tell the truth, that is a great thing. But it's got to be kind of equally terrible when you're using comedy to deceive people, or you're trying to use humor to deceive people. Maybe you'll get some laughs, but usually the applause, like they talk about, where these the elite ones, like your Stephen Colbert's and stuff like that, aren't even getting as much laughter from their audience anymore. It's more just applause, because they're not actually even being funny. They're just telling people what they want to hear, and then and then they can
That's
like,
all.
yeah,
That's all super funny too, because it's like they get mad for people listening to Joe Rogan, which is not that they're like listening to Joe Rogan; they're listening to all the experts Joe Rogan has on, and then they've like been listening to, but they'll listen to fucking Big Bird or whatever. Like it's just like, what the fuck, you retards. Yeah, COVID's definitely real. I mean, coronaviruses have been around. They are cold. They've been around, but it is like they fucked with it in the lab. And now, when they made that threat, yes, you read the threat from the White House. Did you read that?
oh, I don't know.
It says it was a press briefing, but let me just read you this one little tidbit because it's really, really cool. He says, he's being so sweet right now, isn't he?
Yeah, the audience can't very well see what this is that has his face all rested on my leg, but he's a little puppy. Well,
So
he's an old dog.
We are intent on not letting Omicron disrupt work and school for the vaccinated. You've done the right thing. We will get through this. For the unvaccinated, you are looking at a winter of severe illness and death for yourselves, your families, and the hospitals you may soon overwhelm. This is and it's on White House. It's on the White House website. It was a press briefing by, I forget the guy's name, but like, that's a threat. That's like a fucking threat.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, and I'm glad you brought that up because, like, I don't know. Maybe we need to get a group of people together to have a serious conversation because, like, I don't know, like, I mean, we can't just keep on like being all talk and no walk because, I'm not trying to demagogue anybody or, I definitely don't. I always believe in a peaceful solution to any kind of problem. But I mean, I just thought about this earlier, just the one piece from that old 1776 document about long trains of abuses and usurpations, and is like, yeah, I think that, even if there was a bad situation back then and they came up with a solution that involved a war, that doesn't mean that the only solution to such a thing is a war. I think especially with everything the way it's changed, it's probably shouldn't even be at the top of the list. But I mean, there has to be a point where we've all decided, like, because I'm fed up. Like, I'm humiliated mostly at this point by the fact that, like, I'm still putting up with any of it. Like, you say some shit like that, like, you do not get to pretend to be in charge anymore. Yeah. Like, I don't know, because I don't know what responding seriously means, but there needs to be a serious response to this, because I can't even think along the lines like, yeah, well, we got to work within the system and change the system. Like, no, we have to effectively give these people the middle finger. I don't think it's necessary to use violence. I think that it's necessary to walk away.
Yeah.
So how do we effectively walk away? How do we just say, we're not with you, motherfuckers? Like, don't want nothing to do with you. I mean, secession.
They better
Fuck
come
these
through with
fascists.
that threat, because if they don't, I even said this in the family chat, which my sister responded very nice. But I was like, they better follow through with this threat, because otherwise I'm going to start threatening. And then my sister goes, no, we're not going to threaten. We're going to promise. And I'm like, yeah.
Well, that exactly, like, fuck their empty threats. If I'm not going to threat, what I would do first would say, in no unclear terms, this is what I will do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's getting so stupid. Or, I mean, it's been so stupid, but we have to we're at the bottom of the list, and that's where we are. Or war is at the bottom of the list, and I mean, it is. We are definitely in civil war, right? Like, literally. I don't know. We do have to just have our little communities, but I still need to go to the grocery store and shit, but I haven't been wearing my mask at the grocery store. Oh, and you know what's so funny? So Denver County, their mask mandate is up. Don't worry, I won't give you COVID. Is up on December 3rd. Please do. And then, but the counties around, so I think it's Adams, Arapahoe, Jeffco, Boulder have mandates as well. But it's all up on different days and shit. It's just like, that's not even fucking science. And the only reason Denver, Did you hear that? I love that song. The only reason Denver is up is because of the stock show, because the stock show CEO, well, because they work so closely with Denver, it's like quasi governmental anyways, but he was like, we're not going to do masks, blah, blah, blah. And then like a couple days later, Denver put the mask mandate in, but they made it so it'll be up on the 3rd and the show doesn't start till like the 8th or something. So it's like, I don't give a shit, man.
Well, I've really appreciated how, like, I mean, obviously there's both is happening. There is compliance and there's also non-compliance, but I've seen so much non-compliance. It really, that at least is the good news.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of like back when it was kind of effectively lifted, like they weren't, the masking thing was kind of dying down a little bit, but only on the RTD systems and like the airport. Those were at one point the only places that seemed to really have like a, like, yes, you must wear a mask kind of policy.
Right.
And they, on the light rail, because I don't take those buses or light rails very often anymore, but I did take one to like the airport a while back, and yeah, they're like periodically blasting this thing on the speakers in there about how like everybody on this train must wear a mask. And I'm like, and then you look around and I'm not the only one. Sweet. In fact, I think there were I think I spotted more people not doing it than doing it, and that still is my experience in some areas. Like you go to certain, and the only places I've been where they have been like, no, you absolutely got to do this, is this one like toy store that I went to, where it was silly because I was like on my way out at that point. So it made absolutely no sense. But then there was the Whole Foods that will do it. They'll actually have somebody at the door who will stop you from entering without one. And then there was one dispensary where the guy didn't let me pass the door. It's like, and then he's like, thanks, man. And then what can I get you, man? And all this kind of like, yeah, I mean, what are you doing? Like, are you trying to cover for the fact that you're like being stupid and telling me to put shit on my face? Like, and he asked me if I wanted to start or join their rewards program. I was like, I only came here because it was conveniently located. Like, you think I'm ever coming back to your business ever again? Like,
right.
It's like that. There's a lot of competition.
So
you're gonna treat me like some weird.
Yeah, open carrying helps keep much. Yeah, and I also say like being a tall blonde helps too. Like, who's gonna fucking say shit to me? Me and Allie walked out of a restaurant the other day. Like, we were walking around without it, but it's like, who's gonna say shit to us? We're like tall, like, look good, fuckers. And yesterday at the grocery store, everyone I saw without them, which we've talked about. Like, we have to be a beacon. We have to like help people. Right. Like, I can take it off too. Like,
yeah, because I have the opposite of the like sentiments that I have heard Joe Rogan express, where because he is clear at least that like, yeah, he's not convinced that these things have any points at all, but he says like, I will wear one in public. I think maybe some of it that he's not really maybe even honest with himself about is that some of it has to do with the fact that he knows that he's well seen, that he's known, people will recognize him. He doesn't want to. He reasonably wouldn't want the paparazzi to be constantly like, Joe Rogan spotted over here without a mask, because people would do that.
Yeah.
So maybe maybe it's not fair to criticize him, but I don't agree with the position, the sentiments that he was expressing, which is like that, like, it's while I do think it's stupid, I'll still do it because it helps people feel comfortable. Well, I think it helps people feel like this world is not completely lost its mind when they see somebody else who's not doing this stupid bullshit. Like, so I kind of feel similarly morally obligated to not do it, even if I would rather like be gray man and like and just not raise any eyebrows, just blend in, do what I'm expected to do and not get any attention. I feel that is. My conscience doesn't really like that.
Well, right.
I gotta.
It's wrong.
The only way that I feel like I can morally justify wearing a mask is in situations where I absolutely have to.
Like with driving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Wear two masks over your boobs. I know, right?
I had this one passenger last week that was pretty chill, and And yeah, he immediately was like relieved. It's like, okay, cool. I guess you're good, so I'm good. And it's like, yeah. And then he just said something. It's like, so sick of this. We had like a brief conversation about it, and he mentioned that he actually bought a ball gag, so that he could like wear that places that require masks. Like he did not specify. And he also mentioned that apparently, like, he got a couple of girls' numbers over doing that too. So it's like,
That's a good idea. Dude need to be more ridiculous at some point, my friend.
I was looking at some silly masks on like Etsy and stuff like that, because I had a similar idea about getting like an actual leather muzzle or something like that, but I haven't invested in it yet. I kind of like the ones that have messages on them and stuff like that, like
my Obey ones. I like my Obey ones, but I haven't worn, or I did wear. Where did I wear the one? Oh, I had to do a training at Stock Show, so we had to wear. They're like we were training people, so that day I had to wear it. So I wore one that says like Obey, Consume, from They Live. I was like, I wore that, but then I'm like, most of the people at this there aren't fucking into it either. You know what's so funny is all these older people that I volunteer with, none of them passed away. None of them passed away this last year, and like they were really sick because that was January 2020, and it was the virus was here. And a lot of people got really sick then too. So I don't know.
Well, I'm pretty sure that one of my family members probably wouldn't still be here if it wasn't for the saving grace that when he told the hospital on the phone what he was reading his temperature at, it wasn't quite high enough that they would recommend hospitalization. I mean, I really do think that a big causal factor in the dying part is going to the hospital.
Yeah.
So I think it's just fortunate that he was not advised to go to the hospital. I think even if his fever had been a few degrees higher, he still would have been better off not going to the hospital. Like, granted, it would have even been better than that had somebody that he talked to been like, "Ooh, we should get you some monoclonal antibodies."
Right.
And horse medicine.
The horse paste. Well, if you read up, like been reading a lot on Munchausen by proxy, and a lot of people who do it are nurses and doctors.
Oh yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, I mean, and so many of the people who are losing their jobs for not getting the shot are nurses, who actually have more insight than the arrogant doctors that kind of just walk up and check in real quick with a clipboard and then walk on. Like these nurses got like boots on the ground, and they're like seeing how shit is panning out, and they're the ones being told to like push it under the rug when somebody has a side effect.
Right.
They're not stupid. I mean, like, you're not guaranteed to be a genius for being a nurse, but that's not an easy field to get into. It takes a lot of hard work and schooling to be able to become a nurse. It's like the idea that all of these nurses are standing up against this out of ignorance is just absolutely absurd.
It is. And they're okay with other vaccines and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, bye, Jeff. Yeah, like my friend Erin. So she does have a religious exemption. She only works like 1 day a week as a nurse, but she was saying there was nurses there trying to pressure her into it. And of course they're large women, like very large. And like they just have, she has a very good like biological understanding, and she's like, they don't understand at all what's going on, so like there's like the dumb ones, and then there's the ones who like know what's going on, and thank God. But I should push that. We only got 7 people on, but so my friend Erin started a single issue pack in Colorado. It's on Twitter. It's Medical Freedom CO on Twitter. We have to get some more donations in, and then we got to start doing some interviews of nurses and doctors who have been leaving the profession or leaving their job, at least because of the mandates. But we're going to use the PAC to fight the mandates, at least on the healthcare workers benefit, because right now under DORA, which is the licensing agency in Colorado, they are demanding that the healthcare workers, obviously they have to have the vaccine. All the other businesses that are doing it are private businesses, and blah blah blah. And then there's all this stuff with the Biden OSHA, which I haven't caught up with all that, but I don't know if you saw that where like it got blocked and they got unblocked.
I did see one little thing. Well, I didn't click on it because I mean I focused on what happened when I was just kind of browsing my Twitter feed. I'm not Twitter, but the YouTube feed, and then there was one that was like COVID-19 news, and the whole row of it like is just looking at all of the headlines. The one that caught my eye that I actually clicked on was this picture of a 6-year-old girl with a mask on getting injected, and but yeah, one of those headlines I remember said something about that suggested to me that mandate was like revived, I think was the word it used.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, don't worry. Yes, the Supreme Court knocked it down, but we got it back up again, standing up on its feet.
Yeah, it's so there's really nothing safe. I mean, there's nothing safe. We've known that nothing could save us anyways, but like courts aren't gonna fucking save us.
Right. And that's the thing that I kind of wish, is I was already kind of getting into this attitude about like these so-called like constitutional conservatives and stuff like that. It's like, how much proof do you need that this is not actually protecting your rights? Like, how much you've got, whatever these checks and balances were supposed to be, it's the same government that is supposedly holding itself accountable. And I mean, you might say, oh, you're too skeptical thinking that wouldn't work. Well, here's all the ways in which it doesn't work. So what do you got? Like, what is your excuse for thinking that like these robed old men are like qualified to like have the final say over whether or not like this government is operating responsibly? It's just,
And then they go, well, we still have the most freedom. And it's like, yeah, but we have the biggest government, or like, second biggest government. It's like, yeah, but not
how
really.
much freedom do we have? I would love to hear somebody's case for why we are actually free, that doesn't involve comparing us to North Korea or something like that. Like, I'm kind of the attitude, like, I want to argue that, yeah, just because they don't treat me like they think I should be free doesn't mean I'm not 100% free. I like the idea of just having that mentality, right? The sort of free men don't ask, freedom is a state of mind kind of thing. I'm into that kind of vibe.
Right.
Of course, it means you actually have to act like it.
Right.
You have to unapologetically live your life despite the fact that people are threatening you with violence.
And with like taking away your body. But then like these fuckers who want everyone vaccinated that don't work for the government, they come fucking do it yourself. Like, stop putting it on the government and come to my house
100%.
and do it yourself.
100%. I just don't want these people to be allowed to be anywhere near me. I just don't want them to be able to, like, I don't want to force them to get a shot, but if they're not going to get a shot, I just don't want them to be able to not starve to death. And I mean, that's kind of like the attitude, is just because, like, why don't you stand between me and the grocery store so that I have to starve to death? Like, these people talk all kinds of big shit, but they won't.
You want to be a big tough Karen, then be a big tough Karen. Like,
stop being a pussy, sending cops over to my well, not that they're doing that, but you know what I mean.
Yet.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the military. And everyone's like, oh, the military would never turn on the people. And I'm like, yeah, but right now they're getting rid of any military people who like won't comply.
Yeah.
So
they're trying as hard as they can to demonize any like unaffiliated like militia group or anything like that, and train everybody to associate basically anyone that has like some kind of, I don't know,
mind of their own.
But then they have like, they're like pro like, Second Amendment, and they are grouping together, and they express some like, we are willing to be defensive, or something like that. Like anything like that gets into the public sight has to be called like white nationalism or something like that.
It's all white nationalism. I'm trying to find that Bill Gates quote because it's fucked up.
But that's kind of why it's like we really can't afford to even be affected by those kinds of lies anymore, because I mean that we can't, like, that's like the final straw is that, like, yeah, people are pissed and they would reasonably posture and say like, yeah, you guys are actually gonna have to you guys are gonna have to actually fuck around and find out one
Yeah.
of these days, and then be like, oh no, look at these people, they're all a bunch of racists. And then it is no, you can't let that matter that they said that.
Yeah.
They're full of shit. They're gonna say everything that they can. There's no lie that they won't tell. Fuck them.
They're so full of fucking lies. They're all fucking pedophiles and shit anyways, like motherfuckers. Oh, I can't find the quote now. I wonder if he deleted it. It's just like, we're all dealing with the Omicron and it's going to be the worst thing yet. And it's blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, there's plenty of other worse shit yet, but whatever.
And they're obviously lying.
Yeah.
I mean, what the thing was that I just saw today after I saw this thing about the one dude that they wouldn't tell us any information about, and this, it's like, that's the best you've got to try to scare us. And then, of course, then I saw somebody who actually pointed out, like, oh my goodness, this one guy died. Like, then somebody is like, the first of many. They're like,
how do you
okay,
know that?
yeah, like, well, that's obviously what you have to say if your intention is to be scared. Like, because how are you going to justify being scared of one person dying unless you are going to assume it's like the first of many?
Right.
When all of the evidence does suggest that this has been mild, and the best evidence that you've got that it can kill anyone is one guy in his 50s who had undisclosed underlying conditions that we for some reason aren't allowed to know about.
And how do we even know if they don't even know that they like what this variant is. Like, how do they fucking even know this shit?
My theory, which is not proven at all, and I admit, I am happy to admit that this is simply what I want to believe, but I think that I have a reasonable cause to believe it, is that like, well, what I think is that like this Delta variant thing is really, really severe, and it's the product of the shots. Like, the shots have helped the original version of the virus strengthen itself into a more severe disease, and that became like the big thing. And then I think that it took also some time for the initial like alpha or whatever to circulate around the world, and for that to kind of interact with people, and for it to start to mutate in people who haven't received the gene therapy. It then does mutate, and then it took like maybe a year or so to mutate into what viruses usually do, which is like, a fairly, possibly more contagious, although I think that there's some question about whether it actually is more contagious, but certainly less severe. Oh yeah, that's what usually happens. Viruses that mutate, eventually they kind of become like sort of commonplace, and it'll end up being more comparable to the common cold. And so I think that's got to be the natural mutation. And what it would look like is that, like, while this Delta thing may be significantly more dangerous, the Omicron is dangerous not because it's more likely to make you sick, but because it might replace the Delta as far as the more prevalent strain. And then without getting people very sick, it will actually give them robust immunity, which is kind of like what vaccines used to do when we called vaccines what they are. Like you would get a little bit of a lower dose, a mild little touch of whatever the virus was that was supposed to be better than just getting the virus, and then it's so little of it that you'll get an immune response, but you won't get sick. I think that actually was a really clever idea, and I think it actually does work. But I mean, a virus similarly could work like that too. If it doesn't make you very sick, but it does give you a real immunity, then cool. If you could just give me like Omicron in a syringe, I'd probably shoot it up.
Well, and like, what would happen if we only tested people with symptoms too? Like, You know, like what if we went back to the normal world where you just got tested? If you
Oh,
were
well, we
really
can't do
sick or
that.
something.
We can't test people who have symptoms because then we're gonna see that there really aren't very many cases.
That's another thing, like with how people aren't understanding what the fuck is going on. Like just the fact that businesses want to test all these people. Of course, it's going to come up because people, the false positives and the shit that, you know, and the false tests, the bad testing. But you don't test people when they're not sick. Like, what the fuck? It's so stupid. Oh, sorry, honey.
Well, I think part of it too is that you gotta have enough PCR tests that we know has a pretty, you know, as not a marginal margin of error, that is going to predictably generate a certain amount of false positives, and that way then you can kill people in other ways and say that they died with COVID. Like,
Yeah, in some places it was 28 days, other places it was within 60 fucking days.
Like, I seriously think they could just shoot somebody execution style and then give them a PCR test and then just omit the part of the story where they got shot.
Yeah.
And say that they died with COVID.
Well, that happened in a couple of our counties. Mesa County, I know one tiny county when a ME medical examiner was actually saying, hey, because they sent the death certificates to the Colorado one or whatever, and at the Colorado level, they changed these death certificates to COVID as like the main cause, where they're like, no, this was alcohol poisoning. No, this was a gunshot. So if it's happening, if we don't know it's happened a little bit, we know it's happened, you know, and I've offered.
Yeah, that's the thing. People are so naive that they can find out a few examples of that are pretty confirmed. Like, they don't know where to run that. And they will want to be dismissive as like, well, these are just a few anecdotes. You can't expect everything to be like, oh. It's like, no, these are just the ones that you know about.
Right.
You actually can reasonably assume that that's the tip of the iceberg that they couldn't cover up, and that what they have successfully covered up is a lot more vast than what slipped through the cracks.
Well, especially even like Berenson, I mentioned this the other day with Hex, but like Berenson, before he got kicked off at Twitter, they were going through the things. And yes, it's super sad when old people die, but every fucking thing was like 89-year-old with already in renal failure, or like, you know, like already has congenital heart failure, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh yeah, we should talk. Have you read about remember that big fiery crash with the trucker, his sentence?
Oh shit. Yeah, I don't think I dove into that very far.
Well, people are really upset about it because they gave him 110 years.
Which is always weird. Like, I mean, why don't you just say that you're locking him up and throwing away the key when you know for a fact that he's not going to be alive for 110
That's what it was.
Years.
Like, there was some prosecutional rule or something that made this happen, where most of us are like, you know what? Yeah, it was terrible. Maybe 20 years, 30, I don't know. But like, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
years?
it just doesn't seem like it's logical at all. Like, unless you are assuming that he did this on purpose, then you wouldn't treat him like he's likely to intentionally hurt more people. You would treat him maybe like he can't be trusted to drive a truck ever again. That might make sense.
Yeah.
But the idea that, I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense to me why like, you may have made a very serious you may have been seriously negligent, and it might have resulted in many people dying, but when it's clearly that you were not acting deliberately to kill people, then the only thing that makes sense to me is to take measures that you won't accidentally kill people again.
Right.
Not act like you're a threat, like you're likely to intentionally kill people.
Right.
When there was intent, then you can expect that there might be more intentional killings. When it was accidental, you might expect there might be more accidental killings. You wouldn't expect more intentional killings when there wasn't even one.
Someone was saying that the Ghislaine Maxwell, the Epstein's like wife or whatever, if she gets convicted, she gets it's less time. And it's like, what the fuck is up with that? So someone was saying that they're trying to like...
Yeah, especially when you do have something like that to compare it to. But all of that is just another thing on the list of the long train of abuses and usurpations. Is like, yeah, that is so damning in and of itself. We have so many examples of this, too many to even keep track of. Whereas, like, there is, and I guess what I mean by an example of what, you might ask, an example of why there is absolutely no excuse for us to bow down to these fuckers.
Yeah. Baby
The
rapists.
idea that they would even entertain the possibility of a known, like, child predator, like, and all of the details of that, not making it like that much worse than what you would expect from just like a normal, everyday garden variety pedo. Like, this guy, this lady is fucking terrible.
Oh, it's bad.
And the idea that if she gets convicted, they would treat her more lightly than they would treat a dude that accidentally kills 4 people in a trucking accident. That alone should be enough where we're all like, yeah, this government is done. They're fucking fired.
But that doesn't happen. No, I mean, and even like he didn't use the brakes, and there was there was a runaway truck ramp he passed that he could have used, and it sounds like it was a training issue. Like, it sounds like he just wasn't trained good enough, which I don't know if that could fall on the truck, the company he worked for. I don't know. But there's always trucks at the bottom of that hill with their brakes on fire.
Well, and then I guess that there, what you have to is like, I mean, what is kind of common is like, it's just the mentality of like, well, someone has to pay.
Yeah.
Well, that's not self-evidently logical.
No.
Like, well, it's kind of like the idea of like scapegoating, or like, you like the old stuff. Like, I guess I'm now thinking of like biblical references where it's like, well, somebody did a sin, they have to offer a sin offering. They've got to slaughter a healthy animal or something like that and offer this up as to atone for the sin or something like that. And of course, skipping past like the way that there was supposed to be a new covenant in the whole like biblical sense. I mean, we're treating it as if it's like a ritual, like atonement for people's suffering, as if causing more suffering is going to cancel out the suffering that happened first.
Right.
It doesn't actually make any sense.
No.
What you really want to do is try to stop there from being more suffering.
Right.
You look into, oh no, this was an accident, is a really terrible consequence to this accident. The only thing you should be focused on is, how do we stop this from happening again? Not how do we really fuck this guy up so that he seriously knows that he fucked up. As if he doesn't already have to because I feel you can assume this dude is already
In hell.
like having a terrible time of the fact that he is. I thought about this when I was driving my car through a green light intersection, perfectly legally, not even speeding, and this dude on one of those like little electronic scooters just runs a red light right in front of me, and I still don't know how my reaction time was good enough that I stomped on the brake and didn't kill him.
Did he like say sorry or anything?
He just stood there with his like a deer in the headlights and looked at me, and I just stood there like, I think I like just like literally like face palmed and just sat there like breathing until he got out of my way, and then I waited for the next time that the light turned green, since I didn't make it through the intersection.
Right.
That like, I thought about like how much that would have destroyed me, even though I know it wouldn't have been my fault. If I hadn't managed to stomp on that brake and I had killed that dude, I can't even imagine living.
Yeah.
That would have been enough punishment for even if I had been being negligent.
And that guy had a shitty lawyer for a minute. I don't remember that, but there was like some notorious lawyer who's been in the news before, and he tried to be the guy's lawyer at first, and then he got arrested for DUI. Like, it was just a shit show for the poor guy from the beginning. Like, I know if I was a truck driver, I sure as shit wouldn't want to drive through the mountains. That's for sure. Like,
oh yeah,
it's hard enough just with the cars.
Did I tell you about the truck driver that I got to talk to a little bit, that I picked up from a hospital?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, this guy. I think I got his story pretty right. He was, I think, Ukrainian, did not speak very good English, had a thick accent, but But yeah, he had been in the hospital for at least a month, if not a little bit longer than that. And he was still all like bruised up and stuff like that. Like it was like one of these things where he's probably kind of lucky that he even survived
Was it
because he
an
tipped
accident?
over. Yeah, he was driving through the mountains on 70 in his big 18 wheeler. And what it sounds like happened was that he was probably a little sleep deprived. And because he also told me at one point that he knew that there was that 7 miles from where he was, there was a rest stop, and he had the intention of going to that rest stop. So I think he knew that he needed a nap, and he just needed to make it 7 more miles. And then he says that what he thought happened was he thought he saw some kind of animal run across the road, and that he just quickly like knee jerk reaction, did something with his wheel to try to not hit the coyote or whatever, and he ends up on his side.
Like, did he roll down a hill or anything in the mountains?
I don't think so. I think that's probably why he's alive, is that he tipped over. The truck didn't survive. He got badly hurt, but
Poor guy.
but he's probably never going to be a truck driver again. And
yeah. That's the thing. I mean, you see how many just regular accidents happen. So it's like, they have to happen with trucks too, because humans are, we're human.
I mean, it's not by any stretch of the imagination a safe thing to be doing.
No.
I mean, those windy roads are not really. I mean, honestly, it's like I-25 at the speeds that people go. It's not a safe road to ever drive on under any circumstances.
No.
But we do it every day.
Have you been down to the Springs since they opened up?
Oh, no, I haven't.
It's actually nice right now. It's actually like, so they took all the like barriers away and stuff. So I was like, well, but it's the toll. They added a lane. They added a lane and it's a toll lane, but right now it's waived or whatever. So
well, that's good. Sometimes though, I know I've seen this one time and it was really suspicious, was that like it looked like there were people who were intentionally slowing down traffic on E470 on C470, where it's not just the toll road, but there is an express lane.
Oh, okay.
Like it seemed like people were intentionally slowing down traffic to try to coax people into going and driving us. Like, I bet you work for the government, don't
Probably.
you? You're trying to make people so impatient. They're like, fuck it, I'm gonna go into the express lane where I have to pay, but at least I won't be late to work.
I wouldn't doubt it. There's always shit like that going on. People just drive like shit out here anyways. I can't stand it.
Yeah, honestly, I probably need to have like another way of making money, not because I want to stop doing this entirely, but because it's a stressful job. Like it kind of my adrenals are probably like worse off than I realize.
Well, you're taking care of people in your care, kind of like.
Yeah, I've got the pressure of not only I'm responsible for the safety of the others. I'm also responsible for their comfort. Like, I don't want to freak them out, even if I don't do something that gets us all killed. I also just have to deal with the traffic, and I may be more sensitive than I should be to like my surroundings. Cause like, I don't know, not to boast, but I'm a little bit of an empath. And if I sense that I'm driving in such a way that is slowing somebody down behind me, I feel bad about that. Right. I don't, so I'm sensitive. Yeah, I'm sensitive to not like messing up other people's experience of driving. So I care. When someone tailgates me, before I get mad that they're tailgating me, I ask myself, is it possible that I am being an idiot and that I should have done or should now do something to help them get around me, so that they don't feel the need to hint, like try to let me know that I'm slowing them down. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking if we get a new car, I would do it. But I'm like, such a crazy driver. But then I'm like, the taxi drivers in the city are crazy and shit. Yeah. So. And
I mean, honestly, like I noticed that myself, like because of me being sensitive to how I imagine the people back there must feel, I drive less crazy while I have passengers than I ever used to.
Right.
Because like I care about my ratings, I guess too, but I also care.
Yeah, empath.
I don't want to like go around a turn too sharp and make them feel all comfortable and scared.
I know I'm antsy pants. I have to pee again. Mom. I got ants in my pants. You need anything?
Well, I was told that I should get a lobotomy. Do you got one of those down there?
I have like an ice pick you could use.
Okay, we're going for the ice pick up the nostril method. No, that's cool. Actually, you could, if it's not too far out of your way, give me some water.
Okay, I'll grab water.
Forest Mommy is going and getting things. yeah, it's kind of excessive to say the word like empath. I think kind of because it's kind of it just means that you don't only care about yourself. So isn't that kind of weird that like it's almost like narcissism is more the norm now, that we need a word for somebody who's simply, I don't have anything really to boast about other than I'm not a narcissist, I don't think. Oh no. Forest Mommy left, so we lost half our audience. Well, we've also been going on for almost 2 hours. Okay, I'm going to go to Twitter to draw inspiration. I know she's back.
Wait, hold on. Speaking of,
I was just saying that we lost half our audience because it was just me here.
Whatever. They come and go.
I'm kidding, kind of. But yeah, what about that guy that like is like, I mean, imagine with all of the photos that he was posting on that thread, like what he must have looked like from the perspective of outsiders, like in the airport and all the place. It's like, what is this guy doing? Just like taking pictures of everybody that he can spot who has like a slight transgression.
It's fucked up, man.
Because I mean, it's not, and it's not even just people who are like standing there with no mask on. He's like trying to catch people in the act of having their nose exposed. Like,
and the stewardess and stuff. Like,
the funniest one to me though was the guy where all he says something in there to indicate like the gate number and stuff like that where they're nearby, because he's trying to like be an actual like
tattletale.
Yeah, he's trying to be a snitch. He's trying to actually inspire somebody to find these people and reprimand them.
Yeah, it's fucked up. By the way, have you ever read this book? It's about a kid. So it was when they were doing the full frontal or the transorbital lobotomies. If everyone's ever read this, read it. It's My Lobotomy by Howard Dulles. He's actually on Twitter. But when the transorbital lobotomies were science, the guy won a fucking like Nobel Peace Prize or something for it. And he was just fucking scrambling people's brains. He was just going around scrambling people's brains. And so
frontal lobotomy. Yeah, I'd rather have a bottle in front of me.
So this is a book about how this kid whose mom was a little bit crazy. I didn't return it to that person. The mom was, these people were giving kids to like do this lobotomy to, and so this guy had this done to him. Luckily he's like alive still, but it's crazy.
That actually does remind me, like, this could be interesting, like sort of Twitter phenomenon to discuss, is that only I am the non-narcissist. You're all a bunch of sociopaths, and I alone have a reasonable image of myself and opinion.
Yes. And what I like most about you is how humble you are.
I'm the only person alive who is humble. Everyone else is arrogant as fuck. No.
God.
Well, no, but speaking of lobotomies, man, this is one of these things that also kind of like stuck out. What was, because I made like a point in some kind of thread about youth in defense of like, yes, it is possible for doctors to actually be wrong. It's possible that that in the future, looking back, this will be like medical malpractice. and there have been like Nobel Prize winning Luc Montagnier, I think, or Montagnier. I'm not that great at French stuff, but yeah, Nobel Prize winning French virologist that was like from the start of this, like saying like history books will show that this is not only a like not only is this like a medical error, it's also just it's like two levels of it being an error is what he was saying, and the history will show this. He said this with that, I don't know. To see somebody with his kind of credentials saying something with that kind of confidence, unless he's really a grifter, which I'm not sure what he stands to gain, then you take that kind of guy, at least you take what you listen to what he's saying and see if it's possible that he's right. You don't just say, "Ooh, this guy must be silenced because he's obviously crackpot." Like, regardless, you never know.
Said that about COVID?
Yeah, well, no, he was saying that about the mass vaccination program. He was saying that this idea of like mass vaccinating the entire world as a response to a pandemic, like this is the most absurd, crazy idea that he could even imagine. And he's like, and he claimed that like that their shots are going to be responsible for the variants, and he's like in a very like mark my words kind of attitude where he's coming from. Like, sure, he's got very little to lose, but his reputation as a Nobel Prize winning virologist that probably takes pride in his legacy. And he's saying he's putting his reputation on the line. Of course, all he had to do was say that. And as far as all these people are concerned, he has no reputation anymore.
Was that
no? That was like that was pretty early on. He was making that. I've posted that clip a few times, but yeah. I mean, but he's been saying that. But I didn't mean to digress. I was saying that that like I was just trying to make a point about how medical malpractice has happened before. So maybe we shouldn't be so confident that just because the mainstream, if you will, opinion is this, that maybe there is at least a chance that they're wrong and they're maybe making a big mistake. And I use an example of like how they used to drill holes in people's skulls about headaches.
Right.
And this commie bastard is just like it manages to get this dunk on me, I guess, where he posts some kind of reference to that there's actually some medical utility to actually drilling holes in people's skulls for some reasons, including this maybe practice that was, I forgot what the word was, but it's kind of like similar to lobotomy, different otomy or something like that, that can be helpful in some of these cases. Is it? And then of course I'm like dealing with like every time I see a notification about this, like I just see all these other commie bastards liking his stupid tweet about which was just to dismiss my point that it's possible that people are wrong sometimes.
Right.
Well, but no, like what are you trying to prove with that? The opposite of my claim that doctors cannot be wrong? Because you are a fucking idiot if you would think
well, and it's
that.
so stupid because it's like one thing if someone like his brain is swelling or something, they have to drill in compared to when they were just doing it. They were just doing it to do it back in the day.
Well, yeah, like the leeches and the bloodletting and stuff like that. Like now we have blood transfusions because we know that if you let blood out, then it could be a problem because you need blood.
Right. Or the stupid polio comparison though people have been making.
When I even saw somebody they didn't post it on anything I said, but they posted some article about the bubonic plague in reference to a COVID related thing. Like never mind the fact that that's not that there's no bubonic plague vaccine, and it was in fact like a bacteria, I believe, and that's why antibiotics. I mean, probably the only reason why we don't have something like the Black Plague is that we have antibiotics now.
Yeah, and penicillin. It was something from rats, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it was like rats and then fleas on rats, and then the fleas, the rats would be like a
bacterial,
would be a means for the fleas to get around, and then the fleas would bite people, and then they would get the bacteria from the flea, I believe, and then there may also be a virus associated with it too, but the bacteria was the thing that was infecting people.
Yersinia pestis. That's the bacterial name. It says it's extremely rare, but they do have it out. They have
it
had
spread
some out
across.
here.
It spread across Europe pretty bad, I hear, in the Bronze Age.
A girl out here that I went to elementary school died with
The plague.
hantavirus.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, you can get that from mice poop in barns and I mean, she was just sweeping out a barn or whatever, and it was quick though. It was quick. It was like she got sick. She got real sick. They went to the hospital, and like 2 days later, she was dead, and they didn't really know what it was. But
That's wild.
Anything positive to talk about?
Does somebody inspire us to talk about something positive?
No, I'm
or
trying
you
to
just
think of-
that's a good idea.
Yeah, because I just was like,
I was like, really? Are people actually telling us we need to get positive? Are we really
No.
being that big a downers?
although
right now?
if Colin's there, Collins would always be like, no, we need to be positive.
But no, it's true though. I mean, I've managed to vent. I came over here kind of on when I was a little bit like full of anger and stuff, and but now I feel like I've vented, gotten a lot of shit
You
off
got
my
it
chest. So yeah,
What's positive?
I think being solution oriented is a good way to be positive. But at this point, my solution sounds like I'm beating the drums of our forefathers.
Watering the tree
Yeah.
liberty with blood.
The tree's thirsty though. It's nice to take care of trees.
Oh yeah, it is Christmas. Are you going home for Christmas, or are you hanging out here?
I don't have any plans to travel at this time.
Okay.
My grandmother has fallen, and she has ended up hospitalized.
Uh-oh.
And so there's a little uncertainty about where
just drank
people
your
are going to
water.
be and what.
That's your water.
Oh, yeah, I should drink that.
My own water. It looked good. So you might go back to just to try and see. Well, will they let you go see her in the hospital?
Well, I asked my mom about that. A, it would be kind of a long drive, and B, she doesn't think that she'll still be in the hospital,
Okay.
you know, but nobody's really quite sure. There was one weird part of that. I've had better interactions with my mother with the kind of like avoiding. I think we're both kind of making some effort to avoid bringing up things that we get that kind of get us both fired up.
Right.
That we strongly disagree with each other about. But she did have to poke me with one thing that I just kind of let like roll around. When she told me about my grandma, how she had hit her head. She's 95, and she hit her head, and they were concerned a little bit about just wanted to keep an eye on her about, you know, her brain and stuff like that, and want to make sure there's no like hemorrhaging and stuff like that. They took her to some facility near Salina, Kansas, and this is where my mom felt the need to tell me that they transported her to a different place in Kansas City because the hospitals are overrun with COVID patients, and I don't want to just just automatically, because I don't know the reality of what's going on in Salina, but I think I've got a healthy skepticism of like, okay, you think that, I would like you to show me some proof if you want, but I didn't bother to press her on that because like that's just going to turn into a stupid argument that's not going to go anywhere anyway. But why is it always okay? Maybe there weren't enough ICU beds in this Salina, Kansas hospital.
Was she in ICU?
Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently she's in ICU now, but it's not because she needs to be in the ICU, but it's because like they didn't have like room in the other. I don't remember. It was some silly thing that didn't really make any sense.
Right. Well, all the hospital systems are fucked up.
Well, I don't know. Do you think that, would you imagine that there's just all these people dying of Omicron in the Kansas hospitals, or is it possible that maybe they're short-staffed because people quit? I don't know. That's kind of what I want to see.
And it's flu season, so I mean, there are people who've always had a hard time with flu.
Yeah, and there is pretty much like a 1-to-1, practically speaking, not quite. No, actually, the flu is more likely to kill like kids.
Yeah,
but aside from that, like the flu, the people who are most vulnerable to the flu are usually the same people who are the most vulnerable to the coof.
Yeah, in the older ages.
And is it true? I think Robbie made some joke about this. I think it's probably true, as much as it's almost hard to believe that like the like median life expectancy is like equal to the median age of people dying of.
Well, the median age of people who have died is like older than the average life expectancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, which I've been kind of saying from the. I mean, I have to admit I was wrong for a while. Like I don't think I spoke in terms as if I thought that I was 100% correct. I think I tried to make a point that this is just what I suspect, but I was pretty wrong. Like to kind of I was suspicious that there might not have even actually been a virus for a little while back then, because I could tell that we were being lied to, and I went in the wrong direction with what I assumed the truth might be, but. But I still think that I was making some points back then that are not irrelevant, which was that like, well, I mean, there are people who predictably would have been done in by the flu that flu season. And so now they're showing us these numbers that they wouldn't have talked about if it had just been flu deaths. Like they're showing us these numbers in their propaganda. Like, so like how many of these people who have died of COVID can we say with some reasonable, like that had it not been for the existence of COVID, they were in such a condition that the flu very likely would have swept across and taken them out.
Right.
Because that's reasonable, right? It's also a reasonable explanation for why the flu deaths were actually so low.
Right.
Either there were flu deaths that were misclassified as COVID deaths, or COVID killed people that the flu would have killed if COVID hadn't existed.
Yep.
Right? I think that is pretty reasonable to say.
It was in the before times. It was reasonable. Even colds could take people out back then. I know, like I had a grandma get sick from a cold and eventually got pneumonia, and that was that. But no one was like, "Holy shit, we gotta blame someone for this," and I don't know. We'll just have to keep being ourselves. If they hadn't died from COVID. Yeah. Well, they have had like other seasons where they were like, "Oh, we're overwhelmed with flu," but that they didn't shut down the fucking country for like it's all been psyops.
Well, and people actually buy this shit about like they'll actually. I think I've seen this multiple times, that somebody will bring up this like miraculously low like flu devastation like stats from the last couple of years, and said, well, that's proof that our measures have had this kind of like overlapping effect. We did all of this stuff to try to protect people from the coof, and it didn't. Well, I guess they would be able to try to make a case that they have consistent logic only out of their fallacious assumption
Right.
that if we had not done all of this thing, there would have been vastly more people being killed by COVID. And it also happens to be the case that the reason why we've never, ever been able to see such low numbers of flu deaths is because of our COVID mitigation measures that just accidentally saved all of these people's lives from being killed by the flu. It's just pretty dubious.
It's all dubious. That's the like over, and they're trying that again where they say, well, it could have been worse if you hadn't got vaccinated. Like this stuff, it could be worse. It could be worse. And it's like, well.
Is that thing they call like the reverse nirvana fallacy or something like that?
I don't know.
Because it's the same basic fallacy, right? Like, I don't always know the names of the fallacies, but I don't usually say that stuff is fallacious unless I can have a pretty clear idea that it's like, this is not something that really like leads, like this does not equal this. And it's this idea that you can prove that stuff is important to do, even though it doesn't appear to be doing anything helpful, because, well, if we hadn't done this, the situation would be much worse. Like you can think that, You might even be right, but the idea that you could say that as if that's a point that proves anything, no. I'm
I
making
think
this
it is.
assumption. Well, it's like that scene from The Simpsons with the rock that keeps tigers away. That Lisa says that she's going to sell to Homer because she's trying to teach him a lesson and not like confusing correlation with causation.
Right.
And she's like, well, here, let me give you an example. I have a rock that keeps tigers away. And he's like, really? How does it work? Well, I'm holding this rock, and you don't see any tigers around now, do you? And then instead of understanding her point, of course, Homer is like, takes out his wallet. Lisa, I'm convinced by your argument. I would like to buy your rock because he can tell that it works. There's no tigers.
There's no tigers. Yeah,
So
that's
if I tell you that my rock keeps tigers away, well, then you can maybe argue, and then you tell me no, that doesn't actually work. Then I could maybe it's like you say that now, but if I didn't have this rock, we would already be eaten by the tigers.
It says
Clearly.
fallacy is the informal fallacy of comparing actual things with unrealistic, idealized alternatives. Does that sound right? It can also refer to the tendency to assume there's a perfect solution to a particular problem.
Yeah, so it's at least in that camp. Whether it's the reverse nirvana fallacy or the nirvana fallacy, I'm not sure, but it's I think I'm kind of
You're
in
on.
the right
like
area with that. Well, that it would be worse if we had, and then of course, it's not like we're completely blind and unable to maybe explore that because not everywhere in the world has responded to this exactly the same way.
Right.
So you could maybe get some insight to what might have happened if we had done things differently by looking at places that didn't do all of the mitigation measures we've done and see if it was way worse in those places. Has there been any evidence of that?
I think Dee, you're in Sweden, aren't you? I think it's she or he's in Sweden. But yeah, they do use that fallacy all the time.
Well, if you're from Sweden, that you might be interested. Somebody recently tried to tell me that there were like all of these people in Sweden that were trying to flee Sweden.
Sweden?
Says that they're in the UK. Because I brought up something about like, well, it hasn't exactly hit them worse, and they didn't really lock down. And then somebody tried to come back at me with, well, it was a terrible mistake that they didn't lock down. In fact, all of these Swedes were trying to escape Sweden for not locking down. They were trying to flee and go to Norway or something like that, where they could find some more fascism that they were more desperately in need of.
They'd rather go somewhere with more lockdown. It's in the UK. Yeah, I don't know, man. Well, should we take a break for a while if you want? Maybe
sure.
We were on here for 2 hours.
Not that the two people that we didn't scare away don't matter.
Yeah.
But we have been going for a couple hours.
He doesn't know when we fled Sweden. Okay. Yeah, that probably was just bullshit.
I mean, and I don't like it when people just dismiss stuff that I say, but I was pretty dismissive of that. I was like, that is
It sounds like bullshit.
Well, my wife's sister's brother's girlfriend was like,
oh yeah, weren't they gonna do the
I'm like picturing people like swimming across some body of water to try to get out of. I mean, it's just the silliest idea I've ever heard of. There's no taking that seriously. The idea that people are, oh my goodness.
Yeah, we want more tyranny.
They're not locking me in my house. Get me out of this country.
God, I mean, who knows? It is Stockholm. Stockholm is in Sweden. Stockholm syndrome.
Presumably, maybe they learned their lesson.
Ugh.
Sorry.
Yes, there was some news about liking to take microchips. Yeah, I didn't read that whole thing, but whatever. All right, well, we're going to take a break. We might jump on later. I always get too antsy-pantsy, even though I jump up a bunch of times, but we'll go. Maybe we can go read some news and we'll. All right, bye, everybody. Love you. Thank you for watching right now.